It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind, and it either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
This is Mr. Rogers from Phoenix, Arizona, and the only podcast we listen to in my neighborhood is Sasquatch Chronicles.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. We'll be chatting with Hugh, and Hugh comes to us from the Pacific Northwest, and he had this sighting about 15 months ago in the Olympics, and it kind of started him on this whole journey of trying to find out what Sasquatch is, and he's collected a lot of evidence regarding Sasquatch, and he's got it up on his YouTube channel. I'll kind of let him go into it. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com, and if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. I'll be back tomorrow night for the members, but for tonight, let's jump into it. I want to welcome Hugh to the show. Hugh, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And I know all of this has happened to you over the last year and a half or so. If you would, let's back up to the very beginning when you actually saw the creature and walk me into this journey that you've been on.
Yeah, man. It's kind of a crazy story, I guess. Everybody's story with Sasquatch is a crazy one, but so my main research area is on both sides of the Columbia River. So I kind of jump from Oregon to Washington, but primarily Washington is my main focus, and it's near the area known as the Columbia Bar, the graveyard of the Pacific, and so it's a really kind of weird place. There's been a lot of weird experiences in that area prior to Sasquatch, and that's just a whole nother story in itself. But I wasn't, like a full-blown believer in Sasquatch. I'd watched a lot of things. I was open-minded to it, but deep down inside, I have this kind of mindset of, I'm too smart to believe in Sasquatch. It has to be misidentifications or hoaxes, but kind of a part of me wanted to believe, but deep down inside, I assumed it was all BS. And that's coming from a person that was pretty open-minded, had paranormal experiences and weird things happen. But that all changed actually one day in my neighborhood. And I don't live in the area of my research. I live outside of Vancouver, Washington, 3 hours away from my research area. And I was walking my dog in my neighborhood, 11 o'clock at night, because we were catching a flight at midnight. And my dog and I are up this road from my house in the dark, and there's a bunch of real high-end homes up there. They all have big yards, but not wilderness at all. It's all housing development. And I find this deer laying in the grass right here in this path that I walk that path almost every night at this time period. And this deer had been filleted, wide open, ripped open, every organ removed, gone, lungs, kidney, everything gone. The only thing on the inside of this deer was the bile sac, completely intact, not a nick, nothing. So whatever did this methodically and carefully, even though this deer had been brutalized. I mean, there was no cut marks, no knives. It had been ripped wide open. The front legs had been ripped clean off. So the rib cage was exposed. All the organs were gone. I mean, it freaked me out because here's this deer laying right in the grass, right on the side of the road, right where I walk all the time. And I have my dog with me. My dog's a 3-legged pit bull. And, I didn't have any weapon on me. I didn't have anything. And I'm looking at this deer thinking, whatever did this to this deer could do this to me. And I'm in a very vulnerable situation. And so I just took a couple pictures of that deer and I got out of there in a hurry. I got home. I wanted to report it to the Fish and Wildlife and do what I could, but I couldn't because we had a flight out of the Portland airport at midnight. So I was taking my dog on a quick walk because we had a house sitter coming to take over for the dog and watch the house. And so an hour later, I'm on a plane to Mexico. Deer, had to just be left where it was. I got home a week later, immediately went up there. The deer was gone. So this just weirded me out. We don't have cougars and bears in my neighborhood, and cougars and bears do not do that to a deer. I mean, I've been in the woods my whole life. I'm very familiar with wildlife and nature, and whatever did this to that deer, I mean, it did that with sort of an intelligence like a human has, only whatever did that did it with no knife, no tools, brute strength. So that really got me thinking about the whole possibility of, was this a Bigfoot? Was this a dog man? Was it one of these things that I don't even believe in, so that sent me to YouTube, watching videos and trying to learn whatever I could. And, you know how the algorithm works. You put in a video, you watch it, then it feeds you more and feeds you more. And so after a couple of weeks of just inundating my mind with Bigfoot, I had a trip planned up into the mountains to go up and hunt for agates and crystals, just kind of a hobby that I've always kind of been involved with. I'm a rock hound guy. And so that was up into my research area, this rock hunting trip. And I was up there with my son and my dad. And after hours of doing that, they were burned out. And so they left. My dad had his Tahoe and I had my truck. He took my son. So I was up there by myself for a few hours, breaking rocks and doing what I'm doing. And this is really weird because at some point I was burned out on breaking rocks and doing that thing. I said, I want to go up and look into this valley below. And, I never in a million years actually thought I would see one. It was just like a whim, let's go up there and just see. And so I'm climbing this hillside. It's a pretty steep climb up into this kind of viewpoint that looks down into this valley. And I've since named this valley Sasquatch Valley. But so I get to the top and I'm looking down and I'm not even scanning the valley for maybe 10 seconds. And I stare at something and I'm laughing in my head going, that looks like a Sasquatch right there. Thinking, what the hell is that? Shadow, a stump. And I'm staring at this thing and it's walking. It has legs. It has arms. And I'm just, I don't know. I was just kind of blown away. Am I losing my freaking mind? How am I looking at a Sasquatch right now? Just even telling the story, it just makes me sound weird or crazy because, it's just impossible. And there, sure enough, I'm staring at one. And I'm watching it walk through these little trees, and it's all like Christmas tree sized trees that have been replanted, and it's walking through them, and it even raised its arm and bounced its hand across the top of a little tree. And that was so freaking weird to me because I do that when I walk through little trees. And I'm, just, I don't know, like almost in like a weird sense of denial, like just blown away, jaw to the floor. And I remember vividly saying to myself, are you effing kidding me? These things are actually real, and so then at some point I'm like looking for my phone in my pockets, and I had a bunch of rocks in every pocket. And because I pick up rocks, and if I can't tell they're good because they're so dirty, I put them in my pocket till I can rinse them off and check them out later. So I had rocks in every pocket. And where's my phone? I look over my shoulder. My truck's down there. I knew my phone was in my truck. And so I'm staring at the Sasquatch, thinking about the phone. What do I do? What do I do? And I said, you know what? Nobody's ever going to believe this. So I just bombed down this cliff as fast as I could, got the phone, scrambled back up this cliff, making an avalanche, flying up this cliff as fast as I can, get up there, and I'm looking everywhere, and I can't find it. I'm out of breath, just, where's this thing at? Where's this thing at? It's gone, it's gone, it's gone. And then, I spot it. It's still there. I get the phone out, I start recording, and as soon as I put the camera on this thing, it didn't move. It stayed in the one spot. Now I could see movement, like what looked like an arm kind of reach up, and I know that it was it, but it didn't walk anymore. It didn't go anywhere. And so I'm filming it, and I'm all out of breath. I have a video. It's called like Mountaintop View of a Sasquatch. It's on my channel, and I have 18 minutes of footage of this, but it's a camera, cell phone camera, doesn't have great zoom. It's very unclear what it is. It's just a blob, in the bottom of the valley. And I filmed it for probably an hour, but clouds kept coming in, blocking my shot. So I'd turn off the camera and I'd wait for the clouds to drop down. And then they'd clear up. So I'd start filming again. Eventually the clouds got so thick, and I'd been sitting there for so long, and I'm just like starting to kind of doubt, like, what am I doing? Am I even filming anything? It was just a really weird experience. And my phone starts ringing eventually, and my wife is telling me, when are you coming off the mountain? We're going to have dinner. You need to get here. And so I had to leave, and got back to them, told them, my wife and parents and kids, what I saw, what happened. And the next day we went back up there, and I climb up the hill. It's a clear, nice day. And I look down exactly where the Sasquatch was. And there's a stump there, which I couldn't see the stump in the original viewing because the body of the creature was completely blocking out this stump. And that's when I was thinking about it. I said, wow, is that what it was doing? Was, digging in that stump, trying to tear that old stump apart the whole time. And since that day, I've documented countless stumps and logs that are old and punky that have just been tore apart all throughout that area. And so I strongly believe that's what it was doing. But it was just so bizarre. As soon as I get this thing and try to record it, it didn't walk anymore. It's like as if it knew that I was filming it or something. And that happened. That was the day before Father's Day, 2024. So everything that's gone on with me and this topic has happened in the last 14, 15-ish months. And pretty amazing just how much stuff I've found and how many experiences I've had in just a short period of time, in 14 months. When I look at a lot of other researchers, what they did over decades and decades, and I guess I've just been incredibly lucky.
Yeah, I would love to see the video that you took. What's the name of your YouTube channel?
My channel is Northwest NW Yeti Quest.
Northwest Yeti Quest. I'll have to check that out. For the audience, if you want to check out Hugh's videos, again, it's Northwest Yeti Quest. How far away from you was this creature? And if you would you describe what you saw?
Yeah, it's a good distance away. When you're up on an elevation up that high, you're looking down. It's really hard to know how far away you are exactly, but I know that I have this spotlight that'll put a beam across like a quarter mile of lake or river, and when I put that beam down into parts of this valley, it seems like it's further than that. So I don't know. It's far. I'm blessed with really good eyesight, but it was too far for my camera to zoom in and get it. I mean, I don't know the exact distance, but you're probably, a couple hundred yards. I really don't know. You're looking down there though. It's a ways away.
I gotcha. So while you were looking at this figure, what made you think it wasn't a man?
Well, it was all just dark one color, right? And I didn't quite know at the time just how hard it is to get into that valley. I've since become very familiarized with how hard it is to get into that valley. And in fact, I've never even stood in that valley. Every attempt to get into that valley, I've been derailed one way or another, or found something else and got, off on a tangent. I've never actually made it to that stump and stood there. It's that hard to get there. This area is just a bunch of canyons and logging wilderness and rivers coming through, and it's all these logging roads are gated off or dug up or removed. And I've made many attempts to get there, but it just seems like every attempt gets thwarted or, like, for example, I was trying to get there one day, got ran over by a logger and ended up leaving that area in an ambulance, and I have a video actually about that with my knee wide open. It's crazy.
Sweet Jesus, Hugh. You got ran over by a logger?
Yeah, on accident. I mean, he came around a corner in a work truck. I was on an e-bike and he was just doing 100 miles an hour. And I don't know what he was doing. He was doing probably 60 on a gravel road, and he couldn't stop in time, ran me over. And on that particular day, the destination was that valley. I was trying to get to that valley, and weird things have happened. Every attempt to get to that valley, I haven't made it. And he had to haul me out of there and take me to a fire station. And then the ambulance came and got me, and was pretty mangled up for a while from that. Couldn't walk for about a month and took me out of the game.
Yeah, slow down a little bit in life.
I wanted to, when you stare down into this valley, you're looking down, and it's in the area where the Sasquatch was, is all small Christmas tree size replanted trees. And there's some gravel roads snaking through there and stuff like that. And I've never been able to find any connection to these gravel roads. But the reason why I knew it wasn't a man was just by, I don't know, the solid one color of it, this black, maybe really dark brown. And it just never for a second did I ever even think it was a man. It was just like, as soon as I saw this thing walking and its arms swaying, it was just, I knew what it was. There was no question in my mind. I mean, I questioned my sanity a little bit, but I wasn't questioning what I was seeing. It was just, I don't know. It was too apparent, too obvious. And then everything that's followed since just has solidified my belief so much.
I definitely want to hear the progression of what's happened to you and you going out there. But going back to that deer for a moment, what made you think that Sasquatch did it?
Well, I didn't necessarily go, I know it was done by a Bigfoot, but I had to consider that because I know it wasn't done by a predator. I live in Camas. It's all housing developments, but we're on the edge of the Columbia River Gorge. So there is wilderness nearby, but it's full-blown housing development. I've never seen a cougar or a bear in anywhere up here. I have seen a couple coyotes, but coyotes can't take down deer. They'll kill and eat like a deer that's dying or sick. But whatever did this to this deer was incredibly powerful. I mean, the front legs were gone, clean ripped off, every organ removed. I have pictures of this deer. I've never put these pictures on my channel. I've always planned on making a video and putting the deer into the video. I just haven't done that yet. But it was just such a weird, eerie moment that it just made me have to consider possibilities of what could have done this, and Sasquatch was just something that came to mind. What would have done this? What hunts like we do? What cleans all the organs and lungs and everything out of their kill in this way and does it with such precision to not nick or rupture the bile sac? Skilled hunters have a hard time cleaning a deer without nicking or rupturing the bile sac. And whatever did this was careful and methodical enough to not do that, because if you break open that bile sac, you can, ruin all the meat. It creeped me out. And I quit going up there ever since that. That used to be a normal path that I walked, and I'd walk it at night a lot. I barely ever go up there now because of it. And I do. It's not that I'm afraid. At the time it did freak me out, but I'm no longer that freaked out about it. I don't know. It just creeped me out and I quit going up there. But I do strongly suspect that deer was a gift. If it wasn't for that deer, I would have never gotten into this whole thing. I'll get into that maybe later, because I have some really weird coincidences that have forced me to believe this, to suspect this.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back to that. So I'm assuming this area where you had your sighting is your research area. Tell me how this has progressed. What are some of the things that have happened to you since you've gone back?
Yeah. So after the sighting, I had this video, and couldn't believe that I became one of those people that had a sighting and has this, really poor footage to, back it up. I was just like, I became the very person I've been rolling my eyes at for decades, and so that lit a fire under me to just, okay, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to prove. And that's what I did. And I became obsessed with getting out there and looking for research. And one of my first things I found up there was this amazing X structure. And I recognized what it was right away from seeing Bigfoot videos and other people's work. And it's one of the best X structures I've ever seen. And not just personally, compared to what other awesome X structure. And I have pictures of it. It's in some of my videos. And, but it's an X structure. You can blame that on Mother Nature or whatever if you want. But it was just something that kind of like, okay, I think I might be onto something. And so I started exploring a lot of these canyons that connect to Sasquatch Valley. And I'm in the canyon, and I'm deep in this area where there's just no people. You never find garbage. You never see people up there. And I take this weird game trail off of the creek, and I find this footprint. And it was just a phenomenal footprint. You could see the big toe and the second toe, and it was turned sideways on this really steep trail, just like a person would. And I have a video of this footprint. It's actually one of the first videos that I ever put on. And so that really got me going, like, okay, there's something going on in here, and that day I'm in this canyon, and something I realize is paralleling me in the other side of the canyon. I can't see it, but I'm hearing these cracks and these pops, and then it starts blowing these whistles at me. And they were very loud whistles. And, I guess you could say possibly they were birds, but they just seemed a lot louder than a bird. And it seemed like they were being directed at me. And then later on, whatever it was got away from me, and it was blowing the whistle down the canyon, almost like it was alerting other people. And that same day, I found my first sort of teepee structure out there that was really kind of bizarre. All these trees, these evergreen trees, were pushed together in this really weird way. They weren't uprooted. They were still in the ground, but all of them were pushed into each other to create this really weird teepee thing. And that's when I really started paying attention to the trees. And I just immediately started finding this bizarre anomaly that exists out there that I can't find in any other forest. And I've just recently drove through Yellowstone, Wyoming, Colorado. I've done explorations into Oregon. I've been all over trying to find anything that resembles this. And there is hundreds, maybe thousands of healthy, green, evergreen type trees, timber trees that have been topped. And I mean, I can't even begin to count them. And I do tree work for a living. Green, healthy evergreens rarely lose their top. I mean, I can look out the window of my home right now and see thousands of trees, and not a single one is missing their top. Yet in my research area, you can't take 10 steps without finding a top tree. And that was so bizarre. Like, why are all these trees missing their tops? I've never seen anything like it. And obviously I can't prove that it's Sasquatch going up there and topping these trees, but I strongly suspect it. I don't know why exactly, but another thing that I'm finding in my research areas, I believe strongly that Sasquatch spends a lot more time in the trees than I've noticed any other researcher touch on, at least the ones in my research area. I think they spend a lot of time up in the trees because the structures I'm finding on top of these top trees, I'm finding these arches, these insane arches. And I have a couple videos that touch on these arches, but I have a Sasquatch tree structure video that really gets into these arches. The way that they're bent is in this way where they bend a tree, and I'm talking big trees, it's like bigger around than my head, like big full-grown 100-foot timber trees, and they bend them and they hook them against a neighboring tree, and you'll see all these scrapes and scars where the tree was hooked up high, and then I think they have to leave, come back, and they bend it a little more, hook it and scrape it and wedge it into a different spot. There's some of these arches that weren't fully arched, and then 3, 4, 5 months later, I come to check on them and they're all the way arched. And so I know that they're doing it gradually. And I have found some that seem to have exploded, that were being bent and just blew up, and there's pieces of the tree everywhere. And I even, in that same video, I have one that seems to have recently blown up because the other parts and pieces to the tree are still up in the branches and they hadn't fallen down yet, where one good windstorm comes through and all those pieces are going to be on the ground. And so these arches became very fascinating to me. And I have found countless of these arches now. And originally, like I said, I went out there as a rock hound. And as I started pursuing Sasquatch, I didn't care about rocks anymore. But everywhere I went into these canyon bottoms, nobody ever gets into these canyons. They're so hard to get into. I started finding deposits of amazing agates that I never even dreamed I would ever find. I hiked out an 80-pound agate. There's multiple multi-100-pound agates just laying in these canyons. So because of this, I contacted a geologist friend of mine and was telling him about these agates and telling him about the Sasquatch research I was doing. And so he wanted to come out there with me. And so I brought him out on a trip. And immediately, as I'm driving through about 7 a.m. to get to this area to hike down to one of these canyon bottoms, I saw a new arch. And so I pull over. I said, hey, man, I got to go look at this arch. This wasn't here last time I was here. And if it was, I didn't notice it. So it seemed brand new to me. And so we're over there and I'm looking at this arch and I'm blown away by this arch. And the geologist comes down. He's looking at the arch and scratching his head at all these just bizarre and odd arch. And he says, hey, look at this. And he picks up this big pine cone. And I'm like, kind of looking at it like, yeah, it's a weird pine cone. But I'm like, why do you give a shit about a pine cone? And he's like, no, you don't understand. This is a pine cone. Originally, he said it was a certain species of tree. He got the species wrong, but he was right that it's a high elevation species of tree that does not and will not grow in that region. And it was placed there underneath this arch. And he's like telling me like this had to have been brought here. And this is a scientist, he's a smart guy. And so that was weird. We bagged it and took it with us, and we did our little mission. And then it was a month or two later, I was up there with my son and my buddy, and we were camping. And my son and I went out looking at arches, and it was just the two of us. And I'm looking at an arch, and I'm videoing it. And as I'm filming, my son goes, "Hey, Dad, what's this?" And I look over, and there's another one of those pine cones. And this time, I didn't get to see the first pine cone. Brent, the geologist, he had it in his hand when I first saw it. But at least on this one, my son pointed to the ground. It had been intentionally stuck in the mud, intentionally stabbed there, right underneath the arch. And I'm just like, "What, dude?" You know, I got so excited about this pine cone, and it's all on a video on my channel too. And I bagged that and took that pine cone out. And so I have both of these pine cones, and these pine cones will or would or should or could yield touch DNA if I could ever get them tested. I've talked to some people about it, and it's just not looking like it's going to happen at this point in time. But these pine cones could prove so much. They could prove that these beings are transitory or migratory. You know, the right scientific study could probably figure out exactly what region this pine cone originated from. It's a subalpine tree. There is no subalpine in that area. I've looked into it, and the nearest subalpine tree from my research area would be somewhere up by Mount Hood or Mount Rainier, which is a long ways away from the Columbia Bar. And yet there they were, just really, really bizarre. And so on that same trip with my son and my buddy, later that night, we were back in the campsite, and I had set an alarm to wake me up at 4 a.m. I was going to go out by myself with my night vision camera and just trip around in the forest, I guess. So my phone starts vibrating as my alarm clock wakes me up. I had it under my pillow. So I turn it off and I sit up, and I immediately realize there's something standing over my tent right now, because I had all these weird flashy lights set up in my campsite. I was trying to create this weird rave-like atmosphere. And this is a campsite that's deep, deep in the woods. Nobody had camped there in decades, because I had to use chainsaws and equipment to clear out this old abandoned road to even make this campsite. And so any creature in the night would have been used to passing through that area and not bumping into anybody. And so I set up all these lights and all this weird stuff just to create something that would pique the curiosity of a Sasquatch or something. And it's because my son was there, and just kind of make the campsite funner. But there I am sitting in my tent, and there is something huge standing directly over my tent, and it's rocking just gently back and forth. And I'm just like, "Oh no, like what is going on?" And so I pick up my camera, and I don't really know what my plan was, because I still had to unzip a tent, climb out there. So I didn't have much of a plan, but I turned my camera on, and it goes beep, 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 makes this little sound. And this shadow just goes poof, gone. Doesn't make a sound. It's just instantly just flashed gone as soon as my camera made that noise. And it was really crazy, because my dog was in the tent with me. My dog didn't wake up. The smell of the thing, I didn't smell anything, but it's just always been odd to me that, that whatever that was able to get that close to us and not alert my dog. But, my dog's not some trained watchdog or anything. But so I sat there in the tent for a while, kind of debating going out there and looking around. But my son was there, 7-year-old, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't leave him in his tent by himself. And so eventually I fell back asleep and got up around 7. And as I get up, my buddy's sleeping in his car about 30 yards away from my tent. And he gets out of his car and he's like, "Man, what were you doing last night?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Why were you looking in the windows and all around my car?" And I'm like, "I wasn't. I didn't come out of the tent last night." And he's looking at me like doubtful. I'm like, "I promise you, man, I did not come out of the tent last night." And that's when I told him about the shadow. And so obviously whatever was above my tent was right by my tent was the same thing that was all around his car, looking in the windows. And it's funny because I had game cameras set up around that campsite. And that night, they weren't tied to anything. They were just a couple game cameras. I would set them here and set them there. That night, for some reason, I forgot to set them up before I went to bed. And it's just crazy, you know, that it's almost like they just knew. They knew the cameras weren't up or something. I don't know.
It's a little creepy that it came into your camp and was kind of standing over your tent, and your buddy was in his car and it was looking in the windows of the car. At this point, did it concern you at all?
No, I mean, I was concerned enough to not go out and leave my son alone in the tent, but I wasn't like panicked, scared. I don't know. I would think if anything, it just kind of put more fuel in the furnace to keep going, really. You know, I mean, I'm always on alert out there. I'm always a little nervous out there. I mean, I carry a firearm. You know, I carry bear mace, and I do what I can to protect myself, but I've always been pretty reckless and, you know, brave or whatever you want to call it, you know, and so I don't know. I wasn't really afraid. I did have a vocalization experience that did kind of scare me in a brief moment. That happened actually before this, now that I think about it. I was climbing into one of these canyons. It's a canyon I call Dead Canyon. I just made a video about Dead Canyon, but that's another experience, and hopefully we can get into that too. But I climbed down into this canyon. This is way, way far, kind of on the outer edge of my research area, and I'm down there with just my dog. Because in the beginning, I spent a lot of nights up there alone, just my dog and I. A lot of hiking and tromping, totally alone. And I brought my dog with me about 50% of the time because she has 3 legs. It's really hard on her sometimes. So a lot of times I don't even have my dog with me. And this particular day I had the dog, and we were down in the canyon. We spent a few hours snooping around in this beautiful canyon. And it's a very hardcore hike in and out of this canyon. And as I'm climbing out of that canyon, this sound just comes bellowing out of the bottom of that canyon up through the trees and hits me. And it's not like any sound that anybody has ever recorded, because I've tried to find anything that reminds me of it, and nobody's ever captured the sound that I heard. And I did have a guy describe a Sasquatch sound that reminded him of a giant diesel engine failing to fire. And you know, it's not quite the perfect example, but it's close enough that I was like, yeah, dude, I think I know exactly what sound you're talking about, because it's this sound. And I've heard this sound again since then. And, but it's just so loud that it sounds like machinery, but I know it wasn't machinery because it came right out of that canyon where I was just at. And it's not a warm and fuzzy sound. It's kind of like a warning is almost what it sounds like. It's like this jackhammer type, but it just comes. I don't even want to try to emulate it. I can't even begin to, but that moment did frighten me a little bit. And I got out of there. In my dog too. My dog, when that sound hit us, I looked at my dog looked at me, and my dog likes to pretend she's tough. And in that moment, her ears went back and she curled up and she looked at me like, you know, protect me. It was quite the sound. And I've heard that sound. That was the first time I'd heard it. And that same sound was blasted into my tent one morning, many months later after this. And that morning, when I heard it, the next time, I had been up all night in my hunting blind with my night vision and everything. And I drank so much coffee all night long. But by sunrise, I felt nauseous. Like I felt like I was going to throw up. I don't know. It just didn't feel right. Felt horrible. And so I went to bed about 6:30 in the morning. And it was about 9:30-ish where this sound blasts into my camp, wakes me up. And I'm like delirious, like I hear this sound and I'm thinking like, oh wow, that must be loggers, like logging equipment. And I lay back down and I start falling asleep. And then I hear it again, blah, 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 it blasts into me. And I'm just like, what is going on? Why are they logging so close to camp? And then I'm laying there and I'm starting to fall back asleep again. And I'm not all the way in my right mind. And then that sound hits my tent a third time. And I immediately realize that's the sound from the canyon. So I jump up out of the tent. I'm looking around, heart's pounding. And there's no logging going on within earshot of my campsite. There's nothing. It's just dead silent outside of my camp. And I'm just looking around. And that's when I realized that this big, giant red apple that I had set up right in front of a game camera, this apple was about 4, maybe 5 feet from my tent. And the game camera was aimed directly at this apple. It's gone. And I knew that apple was there because I'd just gone to sleep 3.5 hours prior and looked right at it as I got in the tent. The apple's gone. The game camera's aimed at it. And so I run and find my little chip reader and I go up there, pull the chip out of the game camera and put it in. I'm clicking through. And there's the apple. Apple's gone. No picture, no explanation. Apple's just gone. And it happened just feet from me. And that was really crazy because I had seen that Les Stroud video he did where he had something similar like that happen. Apples disappeared in front of the game camera. And, I trust Les Stroud. I don't think he's a liar, but I also had to take into consideration how easy it'd be to create that scene, and claim that. And then so sure enough, there it was. It happened to me plain as day. And I had put fruit in front of a lot of trail cams that had just seemingly vanished with no picture, no explanation. But for this to have happened that close to me while I was in my tent, it was pretty amazing. And I wasn't necessarily scared, but definitely I was on alert. That sound, like I said, it doesn't sound incredibly welcoming, but I don't know what that sound is. I don't know what that sound means.
Yeah, that's very strange. I think Todd Standing was the very first one to talk about the apples disappearing, and he would have these videos of it being in one frame and then it's gone. And I remember thinking, well, that would be something easy to fake, but why would you make something so easy to fake? And I think what you're referring to is when Les Stroud went up there, and I talked to Les, and he said, no, those apples did vanish. Well, what's your explanation for that?
There is no explanation other than Sasquatch. I exactly, the game camera should have picked it up. And interestingly, I put a new one in place, a new apple down, and went out on a journey into the woods. It's gone all day. And it's funny because I was making a video about this crow that was following me around. And I was talking about, the crow, that's Sasquatch's buddy. Because I do believe that the crows alert the Sasquatch because they follow me around and they bark at me like a dog whenever they see me trying to sneak through the trees. And so I'm talking about this crow and I'm filming him. And then I go back to the camp and the apple's gone. The second apple's gone. And I put in the chip and I check it out and it's a crow. Crow came in and took the second apple and, it got picked up clear as day on the camera. So that proved to me, that a bird can't come in and take the apple, without it activating. Those game cameras are really, really sensitive. So it's just bizarre. It's amazing. It's inconceivable that something could do that, but yet here they are doing it,
Yeah, that is weird with the apple. And I'm not so sure that Sasquatch and crows are in cahoots. I spent most of my life, even into my adult life, hunting. And I can tell you about 2 different hunting seasons where, for some reason, this one Dick Crow would follow me around and alert everything in the area that I was there. It crossed my mind to shoot it, but I'm not going to eat it. And I'm not a monster. I'm not going to shoot something just because I'm pissed. But it did cross my mind.
No, absolutely. It's just something I've kind of pondered and wondered, because crows are supposed to have a really high intelligence, and I figured if something lives in this forest and they're that in tuned with all the creatures in the forest, it's not impossible that they would have some kind of relationship or friendship or communication or camaraderie, and I just have often wondered if there is some kind of, companionship between them and crows, and even them and other animals. We're just so far removed from nature that, we've lost touch on everything about the massive interconnectivity of nature and creatures and all those things.
Yeah, a crow is as smart as a 7-year-old child, and they'll remember people's faces. If you're ever mean to a crow, they will remember that. They're a little vindictive too. Man, I hate that crow so much. That messed up my hunting. Going back to that vocalization, that cluck, 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 cluck sound that you were making, could it have been that chatter, that samurai chatter that people talk about? Could that have been what you were hearing?
It's so loud. That's the thing. Like, it comes at you with so much force and so much noise that it's not, I mean, it could be a variation of their chatter. I just think it's a sound that either this particular one or this particular clan does or makes that just nobody's ever recorded. I so need to get into learning how to operate recording equipment and try to get this sound recorded. It's kind of like the sound a woodpecker makes when it's drilling away on a tree, but just so much louder and not as fast, probably. And that's just, it's so hard to describe. It's kind of like a jackhammer, clank, 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 but with a different rhythm. And I don't know, it's such a weird sound, and the volume of which it hits you with is what makes it just, insane. Like I said, it woke me up, and I'm like, what the hell, man? That sounds like machinery, and start drifting back to sleep, and I hear it again, and I'm just like, oh, damn loggers. And then my brain starts working, and I'm just like, holy, that's not a logger. And, it just, as soon as I got out of the tent, I didn't hear it again. And I don't know if it was coming from one of them standing right outside my tent, because I'm a really light sleeper. And what I do when in the woods is I'll put in one earplug, and then I put my ear into the pillow. And then, because I get woke up so easily, that's how I do it. That way, at least I have one good ear to alert me, and I can kind of drown out certain noises. And so it's possible that I had the earplug exposed when it first woke me up. I don't really know, but I know that's how I was sleeping, with one earplug in and one ear in the pillow. Because in that 6:30 in the morning hour, the birds are so noisy that I had to do something to get myself to sleep.
Yeah, I've heard many eyewitnesses describe like mechanical sounds that they're hearing out in the forest. I don't know that I've heard that specific vocal that you're talking about, but there's been many things that I've never heard before. And usually after a show, there's always a listener out there that goes, oh yeah, I've heard that before. I know exactly what he's talking about. I want to ask you about the hair that you collected. Before we get into that, in this area, have you ever seen the lights?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I have captured it on a game camera, and I've not found anybody, in my opinion, that have captured this phenomenon on camera that I've found. I've had people message me and tell me people have, and I've just not found anybody that's captured, what I consider to be an actual Sasquatch or light thing. And what's crazy about this capture is I captured this in broad daylight on a sunny, bright day. And it is a white blob that moves through 3 different shots. And my game camera captures it 1, 2, 3. And it's not circular, but if this would have been nighttime, it would have been a big, bright ball of light. But, if you take a really bright lantern, turn it up to full blast, and take it out on a sunny day, you can't even tell that it's on. Its light is completely lost amongst the sunlight. So the fact that whatever this thing my game camera captured, it's picking it up in daylight and in the sun. I mean, that means this thing was emitting a good bit of light. It was very visible. And I have a YouTube short with that game camera capture, and it's in a full-length video I have too. And I was going to get to that, but you asked, and so I've never seen it with my own eyes, but I have captured several bizarre light anomalies on game cameras now. Because I have right now, I think I have 17 trail cameras across my 2 different research sites, and I'm horrible at remembering things. I'm the most unorganized, most forgetful person on earth. And I probably have trail cams out there that I've completely lost track of, but I have somewhere around 17 set up currently.
You mentioned several light anomalies. Are you just capturing the balls of light?
In this game trail cam capture, it's more almost like a beam of light. It's like a rectangle shape going up and down on a tree, and because you can see it right in front of a tree, and it's like long, sort of skinny rectangle shape. And then you got to click through the pictures, and if you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 through the pictures, you can actually see that it is traveling through the trees. And I don't know what the hell it is. It's there. It activated the camera, and that camera is set up directly beneath these 2 arches that I'd been monitoring. Because when I first found this double arch, it was a full-blown arch. And then there was what looked like the beginnings of an arch. And sure enough, over time, I watched that arch get created. And that's the arch that proved to me, okay, they do make these things gradually. Because I know for a fact it wasn't bent like that when I first found it. And then, so I put 2 trail cams underneath these double arches. And on that same exact trail cam that captured the weird light thing in the middle of the daytime, it also captured these really weird beams of light flickering all through the trees in this really weird way. I don't know what they are. I mean, people have tried to tell me weird suggestions of what they think it is. But and another trail cam actually a couple miles away has captured a similar anomaly of beams of light. But this same trail cam underneath the arches also captured what looks to be like a translucent bipedal humanoid looking thing that stands there, and you get 3 shots where you can see this almost transparent like figure standing there moving just slightly, and then it's gone. And then there's this blurry mass that it disappears into, and movement within that blurry mass gets 3 more pictures taken. And, so that game camera has been really, really cool. I mean, it's captured some really bizarre stuff, and it's directly beneath that double arch. So it leads me to believe that these arches are more than just, I used to think that they were just something that they used to get up in the canopy. But I think there's more to them than that, because also underneath the arches, I recovered those pine cones, which those pine cones, I suspect it could be gifts left for me intentionally. I don't know for sure, but I also suspect that the hair, we haven't got into the hair yet, was also another gift left intentionally. And the deer carcass by my house, I suspect may have been something left intentionally. And strangely, have you ever heard of the shofar horn that people claim has some ability to summon Sasquatch? You ever heard anything about that?
No, I can't say that I have.
No. So I had never had either. And I had got in touch with the people that run the channel called A Flash of Beauty. And I was supposed to meet with them And so I just turned on one of their videos the night before I was going to meet him and watched this interview. And I'm watching this interview, and I'm through this interview about halfway through. And this guy, they're doing the interview with, picks up the shofar horn and talks about all the research he's done on this thing, and that it's in the Bible and it's in all these ancient books, and that it's some horn that's supposed to summon Sasquatch. And I'm just in awe because I have one of those horns. I'd had it for years. I grew up playing the trumpet, so I can blow it really well. And I had blown that thing around my house 100 times over the years. And it just was so crazy, like seeing this guy holding this horn, claiming that it's some magical tool that summons Sasquatch, as crazy as that sounds. Because it all started at my house, and that's the only place I've ever blown the shofar horn. And there's so many weird coincidences that have all kind of transpired out of this whole Sasquatch research stuff that I don't know. And I don't even ever bring up that horn because it just sounds so crazy. But
yeah, it didn't click when you very first said it, but you're talking about a ram's horn. And, I would be careful of buying into too much of what some of these researchers say. I mean, how does this nut prove that this is some magical horn that brings in Sasquatch? I mean, what evidence does he provide for that?
Yeah, well, he gets all into that in the interview. Kunbo, I forget his real name. He talked about a vast amount of research that him and his colleagues did on the shofar. And, they had to translate from, ancient Aramaic and Arabic and all these things. And they concluded that the translation was talking about this particular horn. It's kind of a rare horn. It comes from some kind of African goat, and the horns have to grow a certain way to be considered a true shofar. And I would never believe this stuff. Like, if somebody was telling me about a horn that can summon Sasquatch, I would roll my eyes and just walk away. There he was holding a shofar and talking about their magical powers. And I'm like, I have one of those. It's in my house. My buddy gave it to me years ago because I picked it up and I could make it work. And he had it in some yard sale and I could blow it because I know how to play a trumpet. And so he's like, just take it, it's yours. I'd had it for years. And I don't know if there's any truth to it. I don't know. But it makes me wonder, because everything started in my neighborhood at my house in a way with the dead deer. And, anything's possible. I don't know. You'd have to go back and watch his interview. He gets very in depth with the shofar. I didn't even know the thing's called a shofar. I just knew it was a horn, a goat horn, and you can blow it and make sounds.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch the Flash of Beauty. It was a great documentary. Some of the people in it, though, are a little bit out there for me. I'm pretty open to a lot of things, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know about that. Tell me about the hair that you collected.
I was on a trip. This was after I'd been ran over, and I hadn't been up in my research area for a couple months. And it was Father's Day weekend coming up. And I'd already told my wife that Father's Day weekend I was spending in my research area, because that was going to be 1 year to the day of when I had that first sighting. So I just had to be up there, because I was looking at it in the manner of which, if they do migrate through that area, they were there at that time last year, so they're going to be there for sure this year at this time. I do think they're there year round. It's never snows. It's a very moderate climate there. So anyway, Father's Day weekend, my wife says, well, if you're going up there, you're bringing all of us, because it's Father's Day, we're all together. And so my wife, my son, my daughter all came up there camping with me. And, we were just driving research area, and I'm filming and looking out the window and talking about different things. But I'm always looking out the window. I'm not looking really straight ahead. I drive real slow, and I'm always staring off into the trees. So I don't even know how many times I drove right over this ball of hair in the road. But at this moment, I look in front and I see something in the road and I stop and hit the brakes. I'm like, honey, what is that? And she's looking at me like, I know what that is. And I'm just like, okay, I got to go see what this is. And get out, go to the front of my truck. And it is this, at first I thought it was like a wig laying in the road. And then it was just this huge ball of hair, like huge ball of hair. If I can prove that this is Sasquatch hair, I've not seen anybody with an amount of hair of this much. Like it's damn near like a whole head of hair. Like as if a Sasquatch got in a fight and one just ripped its hair right out of its head and dropped it on the ground. And it's long though. It's very long. It's some of the strands are like 20 inches long, and it's all these different colors. Most of it is this really transparent gray, but it has a black and a brown and then a not so transparent gray. So there's kind of 4 different colors in it, but I have individual like locks, dreadlocks looking things, and they have all of those different colors mixed in each lock. So I strongly believe that it all came from one source. I did have somebody look at it with a microscope, and he did admit to me he'd never actually handled Sasquatch hair. I was led to believe that he was very knowledgeable on all that, but he admitted to me he's never seen Sasquatch hair. But he told me that he thinks it's 4 different horses mixed together. And I have issues with that because, like I said, I have these dreadlocks that obviously all originated from one source, and all 4 different colors and types are within each dreadlock. And I've been communicating with Professor from NCSU Darby, and he's going to be getting a bunch of samples sent soon. I have it all ready to go. I just need to get it in the mail to him. And I plan on pursuing as much as I can to try to get definitive testing on it. But it's a lot of hair. It's big. There's a video all about it, and there's a short that has it too on my channel. And if I can prove that it's from an unknown species or whatever I can prove with it, it's like I said, it has to be the biggest deposit of Sasquatch hair ever found.
Just out of my own curiosity, what makes you think it's Sasquatch hair?
Well, because it came right out of the heart of my research area. In an area that I call Tree Break Alley. I've always just named it that because it's just literally inundated with tree break evidence everywhere. And not far from where the pine cones were found, the pine cones are actually in Tree Break Alley as well. And I've never seen a horse up there, never once. In all the times I've been up in my research area, nobody's ever had a horse up there. I've never seen horse dung up there. Getting a trailer with horses up in there would be, not impossible, but it'd just be miserable for the horses. Bouncy, rocky, nasty roads. And it just doesn't make any sense. Even if I were to entertain that it came from a horse, why would somebody brought their horse up in the mountains and then just ripped its tail hair out and threw it in the road? It doesn't make sense. And I've put my hair next to it. I put my wife's hair next to it. I have very thick, voluminous hair. My wife's hair is very thick and wiry. And when I put human hair next to this hair is about 4 times the thickness. It's very thick hair, and it's definitely not human. And I shouldn't say I know for a fact it's not human, but it's just so much bigger than any human hair. And there are roots. Some of them do have roots on them, and so I do think it came out violently, especially by the amount that was there. It's just a lot of hair, and I didn't watch it get ripped out of a Sasquatch or anything, but there's just so much evidence up there of Sasquatch. Like the upside down trees, we didn't even get into that. I found a huge site of upside down trees up there. It was one of the first big discoveries I ever had. And I was walking. I had to ride my bike about 7 or 8 miles behind all these locked gates, and then I had to abandon my bike and then walk up this river for a couple hours. And that was the closest I've ever been to Sasquatch Valley, the closest I've ever been to where I actually saw the Sasquatch. But in order to get to where that Sasquatch was at, I have to climb this crazy cliff. So I still need to figure out a way into that valley. But anyway, I'm walking up this creek, and I look to my left, and I see a giant root ball from a log up in the air. And this, like I said, I should have told you this story more towards the beginning, because this was one of my first big discoveries. And as soon as I saw this thing, I knew exactly what it was. And I never imagined I would find videos about them, but I just didn't have high expectations of it, you know. And sure enough, there was an upside down tree, and I climb up and get into this little valley. And originally, I think I found, I don't know, maybe a dozen of them. But then months later, a beaver came through there and chewed down a bunch of trees and started building a little dam and opened up this wall of foliage. And so I found another, there's almost 20 of these, and they're not all upside down trees. A lot of them are just like random logs just stuck in the earth like lawn darts. Some of them there's some that are no higher than my knee, just stabbed into the ground. And there's all different shapes and sizes. Some of them are a lot older than other ones. And a lot of people tried telling me, oh, loggers do that. Loggers do that. So I got a hold of a guy, he's a family friend, and he does install logs in the ground in a weird way, and they're called snags. And they do have to do that in certain situations when they're doing like habitat maintenance and stuff like that. So I sent him my videos of my upside down trees, and he was like, yeah, I've never seen anybody install snags that look anything like that. He's like, there's no way those are snags.
Yeah, I'm going to have you back on, Hugh, because I know it's hard to cram 14 months of different things that have happened to you in an hour-long show. So we'll definitely have to do a part 2. I want to go back to the arches for a moment, because the arches have always confused me, because I don't really see any great use for them or why they would do them, or even if they are doing them. But these arches that people find out in the woods, and I know you're finding them out there in the Olympics. You'd mentioned the weird cone that you found at the bottom of the arch, and then your trail cam had picked up these, I don't know what else to call them, entities, kind of were almost like they're see-through, which I've heard before, like the Predator. What's your theory on the arches?
Man, it's changed. My original theory was, I already told you that I believe that Sasquatch spends a lot more time in the trees than other people have talked about. And so I thought that these arches, they have them all over my research area. And as soon as you get out of the research area, no more top trees, no more arches. Just forest goes back to normal. It's so weird. And so I used to think that they were just ramps, that they could just easily just run right up them and be up in the canopy. But then after my game camera started capturing these bizarre anomalies below these arches, I have a suspicion that all that pent up energy in that tree, that might be something they can use in some weird way. I don't know. I'm just flat out. I don't know. I just have theories. I just know they're there and they shouldn't be. It's, I don't know anything about these creatures. I try to make sense of it all, but it's like the farther you go down this path for answers, all you do is find more questions. It's crazy. And I wish I could have got you to watch some of my videos before this interview so you kind of could see what I'm talking about. And I'm talking dozens of these arches. Like I'll take you out sometime and show you some of them in person if you'd be interested. They're bizarre. And the amount of work that has gone into some of these by all the scarring in the neighboring tree where you can see where they had rubbed up and down, up and down, up and down, like hundreds of times to chew away all the bark and chew away, 20% of the tree to create this notch to lock the arch into place. It's, there's just no way these are just simple fallovers that just ended up in this way. Because a lot of people present Sasquatch evidence that I look at and I say, it's interesting, but Mother Nature does that all the time. These arches, Mother Nature cannot do this to a tree. These trees are healthy, 100-something foot trees, and some of them are completely and totally bent in a way where they're parallel, horizontal with the earth.
Yeah, man, I'd be happy to go out with you and check out these different areas. And, I ask everyone on the show, what do you think Sasquatch is? And opinions change over time. But I'm curious, over the last 14 months, what do you think Sasquatch is?
Well, I can tell you what I'm confident they are not, in my opinion. And they are not just some ape, some primate that has evaded captivity. I know for a fact they are not that, because if that's all they were, we would have one in a cage. We would have people, following them and monitoring them. I do believe that they are flesh and blood. I do believe that they eat food. And I know that they have a presence that creates a mess with the trees and the bushes and all those things. So I don't think that they're just a spiritual, ghost. I mean, I maybe they can transform into one, but I can't answer that question what I think they are. I think they're highly advanced, highly intelligent. I think they have abilities that we can't even comprehend. Your average Joe, can't wrap their head around the logic of something like this existing in the forest. But yeah, I can't answer that. Well, I don't know what they are, man. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I really am.
Yeah, well, I respect that. I don't know is a valid answer. And I think it's something that we're all kind of looking for. And you kind of remind me of myself, Hugh, when I very first got into this, the ambition, the determination. I can't wait to do a part 2 with you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. For people who want to check out Hugh's work, go to NW Yeti Quest, Northwest Yeti Quest on YouTube and check out his videos. Hugh, thanks so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, man. Likewise.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Until next time, everyone.